All right. Hello and welcome to our Healthy Lifestyles July walking workshop. We like to do a walking workshop at least once a month. So if you have the ability, we encourage you to listen to this workshop on the go. Plug in your headphones and listen while you walk the halls of your building, or even if you're brave enough to walk outside and get your heart pumping, that's great too. Just make sure that you have some water because it is quite hot outside. If you don't have the ability to leave your office, a-okay. Try standing and working or walking at your desk or even marching while sitting. My hope for you today is that you at least move your body a little bit while you listen to me talk. This is a little bit different than our other workshops because you're mostly just going to have me talking at you. And then at the very end, if you have questions, I'll be able to answer those. But I also am going to join you in our walking workshop. So I am in my home office today. I have my desk treadmill plugged in and turned on. So if you hear a little shortness of breath as I'm chatting with you, no, it's just because I too am moving my body. Before we get started, I want to remind you to log into WellSteps and to record your attendance and to receive points for today's workshop. So either right now while you're thinking about it or after your walk, log in and check off that you attended this workshop. Okay, so today's topic is all about the importance of being a good neighbor, which might seem like an interesting topic for an employee wellness team. But as you listen, hopefully you will see how being a good neighbor will actually improve your overall well-being by creating valuable social connection and reminding you of the importance of social wellness. Social wellness often is the forgotten dimension of health. And so we're going to get started by talking about what health is. So let's define it. If you type in the definition of health into Google, the Webster Dictionary definition pulls up and is defined as a state of being free from illness or injury. In a study done by social scientists in 2017, the understanding of health was determined by how the general public viewed health. And they found 6 key elements that people define health by. And these elements included well-being, function, nature, a sense of humor, coping, and having energy. And then finally, and the last definition that we're going to focus on for the word health is actually the World Health Organization's definition. So the WHO, which is health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So hopefully you caught that. Social well-being is a crucial dimension of health and wellness. So what is social health? Social health is the overall well-being that comes from connection through relationships and community. Sounds pretty simple and relatively easy to be healthy at, right? But studies have actually shown that we are currently living in a loneliness epidemic. To demonstrate this epidemic, I'm going to start off with some statistics. Now bear with me because this is about to get a little bit depressive, but then we're going to lighten it with some actionable items that will help us improve our social health. So first, did you know that according to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 8.3% of adults experience major depressive disorder, and at least 14% of adults experience depressive disorder symptoms. Also, according to the latest data, 19% of adults in the United States have an anxiety disorder. And just for context, that's over 40 million people. But Kirsten, you might be saying this data seems to be all related to mental health, and that's true. But it just goes to show how all the dimensions of wellness are connected. But our social health needs to be looked at and seen as just as important as mental or physical health. So let's look at some data that's a little bit more specific to social wellness. But in order to do this, first we need to define loneliness. The CDC's definition of loneliness is feeling like you do not have meaningful or close relationships, or feeling like you do not have a sense of belonging. So the data. 20% of people worldwide do not feel like they have anyone they can rely on. 330 million people go 2 or more weeks without talking to friends or family. In some data that's specific to the United States, in the United States alone, about 50% of people report they do not feel like they have a sense of community. 52% of people report feelings of loneliness. And at least 30% of US adults report feeling lonely at least once a week in the past year. For a little bit more specific, the age range of 18 to 34, typically 30% of those adults feel lonely at least several times a week, if not every day. And then, of course, that loneliness factor goes up if you're a parent or a guardian. So 65% of parents or guardians feel lonely compared to 55% of their non-parent counterpart. So what does all this data tell us? It tells us that connection is important, and we are missing it and mourning the loss of it. Humans are social creatures. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before, and that's because it's true. There are those in the scientific world that believe loneliness is actually the physiological response to a biological need of connection. When I first heard this, it kind of threw me off because I thought it was really interesting that we would define loneliness as a physiological response. But just like how your body responds to feelings of hunger or thirst when you're in need of food or water, right, a biological necessity, our body responds with feelings of loneliness when we are not getting our necessary dosage of connection. And why this is so important is because we tend to ignore social wellness. We're very good at recognizing when we need to move our bodies and exercise, or when we need to provide it with adequate nutrition to help it be stronger and healthier. And we, for some reason, can find time within our day to focus on our physical well-being. We often can even find times to focus on our mental well-being, right? We live in a world where we talk a lot about self-care and managing our mental health and suicide prevention and all of these things. And while they are equally as important, it's important that we don't push our social wellness to the back burner. And this is where being a good neighbor can come into play. Research and lived experience has shown us that humankind need regular daily connection. Now, this connection and the type of connection we need can and does look different for everyone. Even when I was talking to my team as I was preparing for this workshop, the minute we start bringing in the topic of connection, we often start questioning because we have heard of all the differences, right, between introverted people and extroverted personalities, and how, well, maybe I just don't need as much because I am introverted. And these personality traits, they deal with how we like our connection, but they don't deal with the fact that we still need them. So no matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't take away from the importance and our need for social connection. However, like I said, it deals with how we like our connection. So for example, extroverts tend to be very social and talkative. They feel energized by being around people. They tend to like to problem solve out loud and with other people. They are often very open and willing to share perspectives and opinions, even if they're not fully thought out. Extroverts can often be happy with a lot of different groups of friends and can get their connection bucket filled with some lighthearted surface relationships rather than always needing deep and meaningful connections. Introverts, on the other hand, they tend to need to recharge by being by themselves after social events. They can be social and talkative, but often kind of tend onto the shy side, or they prefer quiet, intimate conversations rather than loud, boisterous, surface level conversations. They tend to keep their perspectives to themselves unless in a one-on-one setting or in a small group. And they like to problem solve on their first and then share well thought out ideas. They prefer deep and personal relationships and may get overwhelmed with small talk. So those are just some of the differences between introvert and extrovert. But as I was talking, maybe you recognize that you maybe fell under both categories, right? There were some things that you identified with in that extrovert list, and there's some that you identified with in the introvert list. And what this teaches us, right, is that neither is better than the other. They're just different. And if COVID taught us anything, is that these personality traits are a little bit more fluid than we might have originally thought. As extroverts discovered that the importance of strength and solitude and quiet and mindfulness. I am very much an extrovert, and I definitely learned through COVID that I actually like some alone time every now and then. And introverts might have realized that when not having the option to go out, even if one wouldn't normally choose to do so, it was harder to stay in than they thought. This means that we might identify with both introverted and extroverted traits. But these traits and preferences also help give us clues to what types of connection would be best for us and what types of connections we should pursue. But the most important thing to remember is that social connection is crucial for our health. In fact, social connection is so crucial to our health that loneliness or the lack of social connection have been found to have the same physical detriment to our body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Let me say that one more time because it kind of blew my mind doing this research. The lack of social connections or loneliness have been found to have the same physical detriment to our body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Sounds crazy, right? I thought the same thing, but research has supported over and over again that chronic loneliness and social isolation results in an increased risk of type 2 diabetes and other chronic health conditions. It can also lead to an increased risk of weakened immune systems, resulting in more infections. And I want to be clear that this is outside of your normal physical health well-being or your mental health well-being. They took all those confounding factors out and just saw what loneliness and chronic loneliness can do. And these were all the things that you would be more at risk for when we're not having those daily social connections that we need. And now, while we don't know exactly why all these physical risks include, it may be due to the fact of the body sending distress signals. Remember, scientists believe that loneliness is a physiological response to our required need for social interaction. And these distress signals can lead to chronic inflammation, resulting in these physical symptoms. Okay, so we've done all the bad news. The good news is that we can do things about it, right? So what can we do? Well, oftentimes we find ways to make our physical and mental health a priority. It's time that we do that with our social health. It's time to strengthen our current connections and seek out new ones if needed. The best way to do this is habit stacking, which we talk a lot about at Healthy Lifestyles. So what is habit stacking? Habit stacking is taking something that you already do and putting something that you want to do with it. It makes it easier for us to build habits and to change our behavior in a way that will be lasting. So, for example, if you have a commute into the office, which probably most of us do. So if you're driving into the office, even if it's just once, twice, 3 times a week, try, instead of turning on music or a podcast, instead pick up the phone and call a friend. Even if you only have a 10-minute commute, that 10-minute of social connection will help fill a cup that you didn't even know needed filled, I promise. Other things that we can stack is, instead of taking your lunch break at your desk, Take it in the common area where you can strike up a conversation with a coworker or even someone new. If you work from home part of the time or all of the time, consider working from home from a coffee shop or the library a few days a week. And make sure, of course, right, that we're being safe, that we VPN in and protect everything that we're doing. But there's no reason why we can't go and sit in social settings, even when we are working at home. By working in a coffee shop or at the library or wherever your heart may desire, maybe the local park, you can start to get to know the regulars. It's very common, even for extroverts, right, to be shy. We don't want to just go up and talk to people that we don't know. But when we continue to give ourselves experiences where we're pushed a little bit out of our comfort zone, and maybe we're just sitting at the local Starbucks, you can get to know who the regulars are. And pretty soon you'll be able to make eye contact and smile and eventually strike up a conversation when you're ready. We live in a world where social connections often bypass for a faster, more convenient experience. I want you to think about the last time that you just went and walked around a mall or walked around a Target or walked around a park or went for a hike to socialize. We now can sit in our car and have groceries brought out to us, or better yet, even delivered, right? If you want to eat out but not leave the comfort of your couch, no worries. There's multiple services to that. Thank you, Uber Eats and Grubhub. If you're going out of town and need a pet sitter, we can hop onto apps like Rover. You don't even have to take time to do your own laundry or go to the laundromat. You can go to Poplet and let someone else come and pick up your own laundry without ever having to interact with them. If you need to get money out of the bank, ATMs ensure that no human interaction is necessary. So between all these apps, services, and drive-throughs that are meant to make our life easier, we have taken away and limited our social interactions, which have then detracted from our health. But we have a choice, right? Instead of ordering carside pickup, we can go into the store. We can smile at other shoppers. We can chat up the cashier, which means you don't choose self-checkout. We can choose to go eat out. If we're going to order from Uber Eats or from Grubhub, instead of eating at home, consider going out and doing it with a friend or a family member or a significant other. If you don't have the time to go in somewhere, don't sit on your phone scrolling through the drive-through, right? Call a friend and create a connection when you're having those moments in the car. In an interesting social experiment, a grocery store in the Netherlands introduced what they called connection lines. So at a local supermarket, people can choose to opt into these slow cashier lines with the understanding that it's going to be a longer line because the whole purpose is that your cashier is going to connect and chat with you. It was so successful that they ended up putting in 200 of these connection lines in varying locations. Another interesting fact about the Netherlands is that when citizens are asked if they ever feel lonely, only 15% of them said they feel lonely some of the time, often, or always, compared to the 52% in the United States. In that same study, 55% of people from the Netherlands reported never feeling lonely. Perhaps these connection cashiers are onto something, or perhaps it goes to show the importance of creating an environment where connection is possible. And that's where our title for today's workshop comes into play, that good neighbor. There are a lot of things about our environment that we don't have the ability to control, right? We cannot control where we live all the time, or we can't control if our neighborhood is safe or things like that. But we can control how we interact with our environment. We can control when and how often we smile at our neighbors. We can control how often we introduce ourselves to someone new. And we can control how frequently we invite neighbors over. We might surprise ourselves and the friendships and connections we might make right outside our front door. A recent study showed that those who went for a walk in their neighborhood every day had a better social health rating. Why? Because when you're out walking, you naturally tend to smile and make eye contact with other people that are out. This microdosing of connection can do wonders for social health. And I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about expanding and improving our social wellness. We can do it in these microdoses, right? The same way that walking for 10 minutes counts towards your daily movement goal. Just a smile at a stranger or a smile at the cashier also counts towards your social wellness. So if you aren't familiar with your neighbors, I challenge you to introduce yourself. If knocking on someone's door for no reason or striking up a conversation in the driveway or hallway is a bit out of your comfort zone, that's okay. Find an excuse to chat, right? Find a reason. We are a culture that loves food. Bring over your favorite treat and introduce yourself. Share a coupon in the mail that you won't use, or find some other way to interact. Maybe you notice that your neighbor has a dog and you also have a dog, and you can maybe go to the dog park together or something like that, right? The next time you're cooking and realize you're missing an ingredient, instead of hopping on grocery delivery, consider knocking on your neighbor's door and asking if you can borrow the missing ingredient. That right there will include 2 touch points, right? Because now you are asking, right? You knocked on their door, they answered, you're asking to borrow the missing ingredient. Maybe they say no, and that's the end of that. Or maybe they say yes, and you get that missing ingredient, and then you have the opportunity to replace that ingredient at a later date, right? And you get to talk to them again and maybe open up a relationship there. There are so many ways that we can increase our social wellness and push out of our comfort zone and connect with those around us. And I really want us to think and expand on that. Like I said, social wellness is our forgotten dimension of health. We tend to not put it on the same category as our physical well-being or our mental well-being, but it is. And it can hurt our bodies in the same way that letting those other dimensions of wellness go can as well. And so I hope that today's workshop gave you some insight and maybe called to attention the importance of social wellness, on why it's important and why we should prioritize it and how we can do it more. There are a ton of resources out there on social wellness. Social wellness is very much a new idea. And so there's research coming out every single day on ways that we can improve our friendships and we can improve our social connection. The last thing that I want to make mention, that as I was doing this research, there was a lot about the importance of courting our relationships, whether that be romantic relationships or friendships, and that we spend the same amount of time that we would when we're dating someone romantically that we would on our friends. It takes time and it takes energy to build close social relationships, and oftentimes we put them on the back burner. And we are in different phases of life, right? So there will be times in our lives where we have the ability and the opportunity to make more friends more frequently, and really work on deepening those social connections. And there will be other times in our lives where we just need to work on deepening the connections we already have rather than expanding our social circles. And both are 100% okay. The importance is that we're either doing one or the other, right? We're, deepening those relationships we already have and building our social wellness that way. Or if we're at a time of our life where maybe we are lonely and we need some more friends, that we're gaining more social connections and we're putting ourselves out there, we're getting out of our comfort zone and trying to meet new people and building our social wellness in that way. Either way is both important, but the one thing I want you to take away from this is that social wellness also needs to be prioritized. And I hope you see that just a little bit. That is all that I have for us today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or you can throw them in the chat. I hope you were able to at least get a little bit of movement in during this workshop. If not, that's okay. Remember, those microdosing counts. And please don't forget to log into Wealth Steps and to log that you did this so that you can get your points for your workshop today. I hope everyone has a great day. And like I said, I'll stay on. Feel free to unmute yourself with questions or to throw them in the chat. All right, awesome. Everyone have a great day today. Thank you.